The broken spear, asterisk, the sky was burning. Flames streaked through the clouds above the broken ruins of the alien world. Smoke twisted around sharp mountain edges. And down below, in the middle of a blackened battlefield, a young alien girl lay on. The cracked ground, bleeding, her armor shattered, her spear snapped in two beside her hand. Her name was Valari. She was the last warrior of her clan. She tried to move, but couldn't. Her right leg was broken, her vision blurred. 3 enemy warriors in dark steel were closing in, dragging spiked axes behind them. Their boots crushed the ashes of the fallen. She reached for her broken spear, but her hand slipped suddenly. Sound echoed from the ridge above metal boots, fast footsteps and a shout. Not alien, but human. "Hey!" a voice called out, rough, angry, and loud. "Back off." The enemy warriors paused and looked up. A lone man stood there, tall and dusty, breathing hard. He looked out of place, like he didn't belong. His clothes were torn, his face was tired, but his eyes were sharp. This was Grant Wells, lost human explorer who had crashed on this planet just 2 days ago. He didn't know who the girl was. He didn't know the history, the clans, or the laws of this world. All he saw was a wounded girl, barely conscious, about to be killed by 3 armored monsters, and then he saw the broken spear beside her, without thinking. Grant slid down the hill and sprinted across the field. He ducked a swing, rolled over the dirt, and reached the girl. She was coughing blood, her lips cracked, her silver eyes wide with fear and confusion. He grabbed the snapped spear from the dirt and turned to face the attackers. The wooden handle was scorched. The metal head was missing. Still, he raised it high and shouted, "You want her, you go through me." The enemy laughed. The leader pointed his axe and growled in a strange alien tongue. But Valari wasn't laughing. Her pupils shrank. Breath caught. He had touched the spear. He had raised it. And by doing that, he had invoked the ancient right. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling. "He doesn't know what he's done." The leader charged. Grant braced. He had no armor, no blade, just a broken weapon and raw courage. The axe came down. Grant dodged and slammed the wooden shaft into the attacker's side. The enemy fell with a groan. The other 2 came next. Grant fought with speed, not power. He ducked, weaved, and struck hard. The spear cracked against armor, splintered at the edge, but it held. When the 3rd attacker fell, groaning into the dust, the field went quiet. Smoke rolled past them. The wind howled. Grant dropped to one knee beside the girl. "Are you all right?" he asked, gently wiping dirt from her face. She stared at him, confused, scared. "And something else. You're human," she whispered. "Yeah," he said, forcing a smile, "and I guess I'm your lucky rescue today." But her face stayed serious. "No," she said. "You don't understand. You held my spear. In battle. For witnesses." Grant raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, and..." She swallowed hard. "That means something to my people. Something ancient. Something binding." "Binding." Grant frowned. "Like... a tradition." "No," she said. "Law." And then he noticed something strange. The broken spear in his hand, it was glowing softly. Faint red light pulsed where the wood had snapped. It wasn't just a weapon, it was something sacred. He looked around. More alien warriors were now approaching from the ridge, but they weren't attacking. They were kneeling, dozens of them. Armed and armored, were bowing their heads to him. "What the hell is going on?" Grant whispered. Valari tried to sit up. Her voice was weak but clear. "You raised my spear, and by our law, you are now my chosen one." Grant blinked. "Wait, what?" "Just picked it up. The law doesn't care why," she said. "Only that you did." The warriors in the distance began to chant. The wind carried their words in a rhythm ancient, haunting, like drums of fate. Grant looked down at the spear in his hands. The glow was brighter now. "What does that mean?" he asked, heart racing. Valari looked up at him, eyes full of fear. "In wonder, it means you just became part of a war you don't understand, and bound yourself to me forever." Grant Wells sat inside a strange tent made of glowing animal hides and bone supports. The walls shimmered with heat, casting long red shadows. Outside, the alien chant still echoed across the mountains. Inside, the silence was heavy. He didn't know how he ended up here. 1 minute, he had been fighting off those armored aliens with a broken spear. The next, they were bowing to him. Then warriors had lifted Valari on a golden stretcher and marched them both through a mountain pass. No one spoke to him. No one explained. Now he was alone, surrounded by strange glowing runes carved into. The floor through spears still broken lay on a stone altar beside him, but the wood wasn't glowing red anymore. It was burning blue, as if something inside it had changed. The flap opened, and in stepped Valari. She walked slowly, still weak from her wounds, but her gaze was sharp. Her face was washed, her armor repaired with silver stitches, and a thin circlet now rested on her forehead. "You shouldn't have picked it up," she said coldly. Grant stood. "What does this mean, Valari? Why are they calling me chosen?" "What am I supposed to do now?" Valari didn't move. "You've triggered the Oath of Fire, human. It's one of the oldest rites on this planet. When a warrior falls, and another raises their weapon in battle to protect them, it binds their fates." He raised an eyebrow. "Binds. You are mine now," she said quietly, "and I am yours." Grant blinked. "You mean like a battle partner?" She stepped closer. "No, not just that. My clan believes the spirit of the spear chooses the bond. It's not a decision. It's a law written in blood and spirit and old magic." He laughed nervously. "So what, we're married?" "No," she replied. "It's deeper. Marriage is a human thing. It's a soul binding." Grant turned away, rubbing his temples. "I don't believe in soul binding or spirit spears or fire oaths. I didn't ask for this." Valari's voice dropped. "You think I did?" Grant stopped. She walked slowly to the altar and picked up the broken spear. Her hand didn't burn this time, but the wood glowed where she touched it. "I trained all my life to protect my people," she whispered. "My mother died in that field you found me in, my sister too. I was all that was left of my bloodline. And now my fate is tied to a stranger who doesn't even believe in our ways." He looked at her. She didn't seem like a warrior anymore. She looked like someone trapped. "What happens now?" he asked softly. She turned toward the tent flap. "The elders are waiting." He stepped into the open. Grant saw a circle of ancient aliens sitting on stone thrones. Their skin was pale and wrinkled, their eyes glowing with firelight. Behind them stood a giant stone statue of a female warrior holding a spear of flame. Its face half burned off by time. A voice rose. From the center throne, the elder wore robes of ash and flame. His voice was gravel and thunder. "You raised the broken spear. The flame is chosen. You cannot deny it." Grant stepped forward. "I didn't know. I was just trying to save her. That's all." The elder's eyes glowed. "Intent is not required. Only the act." Valari stood silently beside him. Her hands clenched. Another elder hissed, "He is unworthy. The human knows nothing of our trials." The first elder raised a hand. "Then let the human be tested." Grant frowned. "Tested how?" The elder's mouth curled into something close to a smile. "The trial of the burning truth. At moonrise. You enter the chamber of memory. If your heart is strong, the spear will accept your soul. If not, your body will burn, and the bond will be broken in flame." Grant stared. Valari whispered, "No outsider has ever survived that trial." Grant looked at her. "So either I become truly bound to you or I die?" She didn't answer. That night, Grant sat alone inside the chamber. The walls were black. Crystal. Spear was placed in the center, glowing faint blue. A low hum began. The room filled with visions not his own. He saw Valari's past. Her childhood, the brutal training, her first kill, her mother's last breath, her sister dying in her arms. Then he saw her alone, gripping her spear beneath the moons, whispering prayers to spirits she no longer believed in. Grant's chest ached and then knit, changed. He saw his own memories, twisted and mirrored. His regrets, his loneliness, his failures. The spear at the center glowed white-hot. He screamed. Flames surrounded him. But not on his skin, they were inside his mind, tearing through every lie he told himself. The bond was judging him. Would he run? Would he break? Outside, the elders waited. Valari stood with her hands clenched. Suddenly, the chamber doors burst open. Smoke poured out. Grant stepped through, his eyes glowing faint blue, the broken spear burning whole again in his hands. The flame had chosen again. Grant didn't sleep that night, not after what he saw. The chamber of memory had burned something into him, something he couldn't see, but he could feel. It wasn't pain, it wasn't fear, it was something deeper. When he looked at his hands, they trembled not from weakness, but because they glowed faint blue beneath the skin, like veins of fire just under the surface. Every time he blinked, flashes of Valerie's memories still flickered in his mind. Her pain, her sorrow, her strength. The spear now lay beside him, completely restored. It looked brand new, sharp, unbroken, burning with a quiet flame along the edge. Yet it hadn't been repaired by hands. It had been reborn, just like him. Morning came with ash-colored skies and wind that howled through the mountains. Grant walked through the village, feeling hundreds of eyes on him. Some were filled with awe, others with suspicion. Some elders even bowed their heads as he passed. But he wasn't proud. He wasn't smiling. He felt ... changed. A group of children followed him. One reached out and touched his hand. "Is it true?" the boy whispered. "Did the flame spirit choose you?" Grant kneeled and looked at his palm. The glowing lines had formed a symbol one Valari later told him meant bonded soul. "I don't know," he said softly, "but something chose me." He found Valari standing alone at the training grounds, stabbing her spear into the dirt over and over. Again, sweat clung to her skin. Her eyes were focused but not calm. She didn't look up when he approached. "I survived," he said. "I know. I saw everything, Valari. Your past, your fears. I felt it like it was mine." Her grip tightened on the spear.
"For the chamber?"
"Shows the truth. You're marked now, just like me. But why?" he asked. "Why would your world choose a human? I'm not a warrior. I don't belong here." Now she looked at him. "You raised my spear when everyone else ran. You faced my enemies with nothing but courage. And you survived a chamber that kills warriors twice your size." She walked closer. "You may not be one of us." "Grant, but the flame doesn't care about blood. It cares about soul." Their eyes locked for a moment. Something shifted. But then came the sound of horns. "Danger!" A scout burst through the gates, covered in wounds. "The Black Claws," he cried. "They're coming through the Passarmed and burning everything behind them." The village erupted. In panic, warriors rushed to walls. Elders shouted orders. Grant looked at Valari. "Who are the Black Claws?" She turned pale. "A rival clan, merciless. They hate my people. And they would never allow a human to wear the mark." Later, as dusk fell and the warriors lined up at the gates, Grant stood in the middle of the square. I'm unsure he had the mark. He had the spear. But no one had asked him to fight. No one told him what to do until a voice came from the elders' circle. "Human." The first elder called. "The flame gave you a bond. Now you must show if it gave us a leader or a mistake." Grant stepped forward. He wasn't dressed like the others. No armor, no crest. Just leather straps, dust-covered boots, and the spear of fire in his hand. He turned to the crowd. His voice was quiet, but it carried. "I didn't come here to lead. I didn't come here to fight your wars. But I raised this spear not for glory but to protect one of you, and I'll do it again." He looked to Valari. "I don't understand your gods. I don't know your ways. But I won't run." Silence fell then. A warrior stepped forward and slammed his weapon to the ground. "I'll follow him." Another joined, and another soon. The entire front line stood behind Grant. The enemy came at dawn. The Black Claws were massive creatures, gray-skinned, covered in bone armor, riding beasts that snorted smoke. Their leader rode a chariot of metal and flame, shouting in a language filled with rage. Grant stood at the front, Valari beside him. Her hand brushed his. "Are you ready?" she asked. No, he said honestly, but I'm still here. Battle began. They fought like fire. Grant's movements were sharper, now faster. The spear in his hand almost guided him, striking with perfect timing. He ducked a hammer, rolled behind an enemy, and drove the weapon through his spine. Valari moved like lightning beside him, spinning and slicing, their steps matching as if rehearsed. The others followed their lead. The tide turned, the enemy once confident, began to falter. Grant climbed a burning rock, lifted his spear high, and roared blue flame exploded around him. It wasn't magic. It was the flame spirit. The battlefield stopped for a moment, stunned. The black claws began to retreat. When the dust settled, people cheered. The enemy fled, and Grant stood, their spear raised, eyes glowing, marked forever. Valari approached. She looked different now, not as a warrior alone, but as something else. A partner. You're not just chosen, she said. You're becoming something more. Asterisk night had fallen over the mountain village, but it wasn't peaceful. The fires still burned from the battle. Smoke curled from broken huts. Warriors sat quietly, tending their wounds. And in the center of the village, under the light of the twin moons, a new kind of silence had taken over the silence before judgment. Grant sat alone on the sacred stone platform. His hands were bandaged, his armor was cracked. The flame spear rested across his knees, no longer glowing, but still warm, as if waiting. He had won the battle. But the elders were not celebrating, because victory alone didn't prove he was worthy. Of the ancient bond, a horn blew, deep and low. Drums followed, slow and steady doom drums, Valari had called them. She approached him, dressed in a long crimson robe, her face painted with ash and red clay. Her eyes were locked on his, but her voice was quiet. You've been summoned, she said. The council demands you face the final right. Grant stood slowly. I thought I already proved myself. Valari shook her head. The trial of fire is not about battle. It's about what's inside you, what you fear, what you hide. He frowned. Sounds familiar, like the chamber of memory? No, she said. The chamber shows your past. The trial earns it. The villagers gathered around a massive pit carved into the earth. Flames rose from its center, blue and red and gold. Thick smoke rose high, swirling into a funnel toward the sky. Carved stones surrounded it, each bearing symbols older than the tribes themselves. The first elder stood at the edge, his staff crackling with red sparks. Step forward, human, he called, and face the flame that judges souls. Grant looked at Valari. Her lips parted as if she wanted to stop him. But she didn't. He stepped forward, as soon as he entered the pit. The flames wrapped around him, not burning his skin, but sinking into his mind. He gasped. Suddenly, he wasn't in the pit anymore. He was back on Earth, his childhood home. The sky was gray. Rain tapped the windows. He saw himself 10 years old, watching his father walk out the door never to return. The boy cried out. No one answered. Then the memory shifted. Now he was older. In a hospital, holding his mother's hand. She was dying. His hands shook. The machines beeped. No one else came. Then again it changed. Now he stood on a ship, holding the command panel. The distress beacon blinked red. The ship was crashing. The crew shouted. He was the only one left awake. He had made the jump alone. He had survived, but they hadn't. The flames grew hotter. He screamed. The trial of fire was not pain on the skin, it was pain in the soul. It forced him to relive every failure. Every moment he turned away, every time he blamed himself but said, nothing. He dropped to his knees in the fire. I didn't ask for this, he gasped. I didn't want to be chosen. But the flames didn't stop. They rose higher, surrounding him, whispering in tongues, not his own. You were chosen, because you never chose yourself. His eyes widened. He saw Valari now through fire alone. On the battlefield, reaching for a broken spear, while her people died around her, and then he saw himself, reaching for it. Not as a hero, not as a warrior, but as someone who simply couldn't look away. The fire changed. It turned gold, and the spear in his hands blazed to life. Outside the pit, the villagers waited. Minutes passed, then an hour. Valerie's fists were clenched, and then the flames exploded upward, shooting sky high like a tower of fire. Everyone stepped back when the light faded. Grant stood in the center, covered in ash, his chest glowing with a new symbol, flame inside a flame. The mark of one who had passed the trial. The villagers dropped to one knee. The elders bowed. Only Valerie remained standing, her eyes wide with something new respect. In fear, later, under the stars, Grant sat by the cliffside. The spear beside him now felt alive, pulsed like a heart. Valerie joined him quietly. "You passed," she said. "If you ever do." He didn't look at her, like it showed me things I didn't want to see. She nodded. "It always does." He sat in silence for a while. Then she whispered, "You carry more pain than you show." "So do you," he replied. She touched his chest where the new symbol glowed. "Do you know what this mark means?" He shook his head. "It means you're not just my bonded protector anymore," she said. He turned to face her. She met his eyes. "It means you're a flame partner now, equal to a blooded heir." Grant stared at her. "So I'm royal?" "No," she said softly. "You're mine." Lightning cracked across the night sky. Dark clouds gathered above the mountain village like a beast preparing to strike. But the real storm wasn't in the sky. It was marching across the valley below, armored in black steel and powered by fury. The Stonejaw clan was coming. Not just warriors this time, but war machines, siege beasts, and something even worse. A blood-dashed debt. Inside the Flame Temple, the tribal council argued loudly. Old voices filled the chamber with panic. "They won't stop," shouted one elder. "They demand the bonded woman. They don't want her." Another said bitterly, "They want him the human. They think he shamed their warlord." Valerie stood silent in the center of the council chamber, arms crossed, her eyes sharp. But her silence was louder than any voice. Then Grant entered. His presence silenced the room. He wore ceremonial, armor-black leather woven with red thread, a long ash-colored cloak across his shoulders. His eyes glowed faint blue under the torchlight, and on his chest, the twin flame mark pulsed like it was alive. "I heard everything," he said. "They want me." The first elder stood. "We cannot stop them with strength alone. If they attack, hundreds will die." Grant looked at Valerie. "Then maybe I should go to them. Alone." Her eyes narrowed. "No, they want me." He repeated, "Let me face them." "You don't understand," she said, voice shaking. "You're not just a warrior anymore, Grant. You're bonded to me. If you go to them without me, they'll break the bond by force, and that's worse than death." The first elder nodded slowly. "If the bond is broken dishonorably, the fire within both souls dies." "You'll lose your flame forever." Grant swallowed hard. "So what do I do?" Valerie stepped forward. "You fight, but not with weapons, with truth." That night, under the heavy clouds, a single torch was lit at the gates. Grant stood beside Valerie. They were flanked by guards and surrounded by villagers. From the valley below, the Stonejaw clan approached, massive warriors covered in dark gray armor. Their faces were hidden behind skull-shaped helmets, and at their front rode a towering beast, a war chieftain, eyes red like burning coals. He raised a blade the size of a tree trunk and pointed it at Grant. "You wear her mark?" The chieftain roared. "You stole her spear? You shamed our laws." Grant didn't raise a weapon. Instead, he stepped forward and shouted, "I didn't steal anything. I raised her spear when no one else did. I stood between her and death." Chieftain growled, "You are not one of us. That bond belongs to warriors born of fire and stone." Valerie stepped beside Grant. Her voice was like ice. "He didn't ask for it, but he earned it. And by every law of the Ancient Ones, he is mine," the chieftain snarled. "Then we settled this the old way, trial by union." The crowd gasped. Even Valerie froze. "No, she whispered. That right hasn't been used in centuries. The first elder stepped forward. Grim. Trial by union. Two bonded souls must face the flame together, connected as one. If they survive, the bond becomes permanent, breakable by war or death. If they fail, they burn, the chieftain finished coldly. Together. Later, in the sacred hollow, Grant and Valari stood inside a glowing circle made of ash, bone, and gold. Between them hovered a flame or Bahart. Fire. A relic said to burn through lies and weakness. I don't understand this ritual. Grant whispered. Valari placed her palm over his. It's not about understanding, she said. It's about trust. Trust, he asked. You barely looked at me the first 2 days. I looked, she whispered. I saw someone who didn't run. That means more than you know. Their hands joined. The heart fire dropped into their grip. Instantly, fire raced up their arms, across their chests, to their minds. Grant was no longer standing. He was falling through space. He saw Valari again, but not just her body. He saw her soul, her doubts, her dreams, her pain. She had once stood on a cliff as a child, holding her dying sister's hand and promising never to let anyone else suffer alone again. She had trained with broken bones, cried where no one could, hear and whispered to the sky for strength. And now she was bound to a human. Her fear wasn't weakness. It was love unspoken. Then he felt his own memories flutter. Every loss, every lonely step, and she didn't flinch. She held him tighter. The flame burst around them. A white pillar of light shot into the sky. Villagers shielded their eyes. The Stonejaw warriors stepped back, stunned. And when the fire cleared, Grant and Valari stood as one. The heart fire had merged into their chests. The twin marks were gone. Now there was only one symbol, glowing on both of them, a single, endless circle, endless circle unity. Eternal, the chieftain fell silent, without a word. He turned down his army, followed him back into the mist. Later, Grant and Valari stood beneath the stars. She leaned against him, tired but smiling. You did it, she said. We did it, he replied. She looked up at him. You're not just my chosen anymore, she whispered. You're my equal, asterisk. Grant couldn't breathe. One moment he stood with Valari under the stars victors, bonded, united the next. A whistling sound tore through the sky. A plasma bolt launched from the shadows of the cliffs. It struck his side, glowing white-hot. He dropped. Valari screamed. Before she could even reach him, more explosions followed. Fire rained down from the hills. The village gates shattered. Enemy warriors charged from the fog, weapons drawn, faces masked. Not the Stonejaw clan. Someone worse. The Ashbound, long thought extinct. Raiders without honor, known for breaking sacred rites and targeting the bonded for execution, and now they wanted the one thing no one else dared touch. A human chosen by flame. Valari knelt beside Grant as blood pooled beneath him. His face was pale. The mark on his chest flickered like a dying ember. No, no, stay with me, she begged, holding his face. You can't leave now. Not after everything. Grant tried to speak, but only blood came out. His hand fell from hers. His flame went out. They dragged her away as she screamed. She fought like a wild storm, slashing, kicking, stabbing, but too many hands pulled her down. She saw Grant's body in the distance, limp in the dirt. The spear beside him growing cold, her heart shattered, and something inside her snapped. They took her to the cliffs, chained in a transport cage, hovering above a pit of jagged rock. The Ashbound leader stood before her, a tall alien with silver skin and hollow black eyes. You broke our laws, he hissed. You gave your bond to a lesser creature. Valari spat in his face. He was more than any of you. You share your soul with a human, the leader growled. I will rip it from you, piece by piece. He raised a blade, crackling with black lightning. Miles away, deep in the rubble of the ruined temple, a flicker of light stirred. The flame spear pulsed once. Then again, then Grant's fingers twitched. Inside his mind, everything was black. He floated in nothing, no pain, no sound, no breath. Then a voice echoed not in words, but in warmth. You were chosen not because you were strong, but because you refused to abandon those who were weak. A single flame appeared before him. It wasn't a fire, it was Valerie's memory. Her laughter, her pain, her promise. Then another voice, cold, broken. Let him fade, it whispered. He has no place in this world. Let the bond die. But Grant clenched his fist. No. And the flames surged back into him. His eyes snapped open. He gasped, air burning, raw, alive. The mark on his chest burst into white flame. His wounds closed, glowing. The spear flew into his hand, pulled by a force beyond gravity. He stood, and with fire in his blood, began to run. At the cliffs, the execution was moments away. The ashbound leader raised his blade high. Valari didn't scream. She stared into the wind, whispering a name she thought she'd never speak again. Grant. Then the wind caught fire. A roar exploded behind them. From the forest edge, a white flame sprinted forward faster than anything they'd ever seen. It leapt through shadows, cutting down enemies like they were paper. Screams rang out. Then he was there. Grant leaped onto the platform, his eyes burning, the flame spear spinning in his hands. Like lightning, he didn't stop. He drove the blade straight through the ashbound, Lita's chest. The monster gasped, then turned to ash in a gust of wind. Valari stared at him, shaking. You were dead, she whispered. I was, Grant said, breathing hard. But I couldn't leave you. She touched his chest. The mark was brighter than ever. How? She whispered. He smiled faintly. He called me back. Together, they freed the others and led a final stand against the remaining ashbound. But something was different now. Grant's movements were no longer just human. The flame inside him had changed. He struck without hesitation, predicted enemy attacks, and his wounds healed as he fought. He wasn't just bonded, he had become flame. And beside him, Valari fought with the same fire. When the battle ended, smoke covered the cliffs, and silence fell again. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of a world forever changed. That night, the stars returned to the sky. Grant and Valari stood before the tribe. The flame elders bowed not in ceremony, but in awe. You were once outsider and warrior, the first elder said. Now you are something new. Grant looked to Valari. She nodded. We're not just bonded, we're reborn, he finished. The sky above the mountains was clear now. No smoke, no fire, no war cries, just stars. But something else had risen with them. A legend. Grant stood at the highest peak above the village, the flame spear strapped to his back. The wind tugged at his cloak, now dark gray with a golden thread, a new symbol embroidered near his shoulder. A single circle surrounded by flame. He was no longer just a human, no longer just Valari's protector. He was flame-bonded not by accident, by choice. Behind him, Valari walked to his side. Her armor shimmered under the moonlight, but her face looked different now, stronger, softer. Are you ready? She asked. Grant took a slow breath. No, he said honestly. But I think that's the point. She smiled. Then you're more ready than most. Below them, thousands had gathered, not just from Valari's clan, but from old enemies. Rival tribes, wandering survivors. Word had spread fast. The human who bonded, the warrior who died and returned, the flame-dash walker. They chanted his name. In different tongues, some bowed, some stood, all watched. As Grant and Valari stepped down the mountain path, every warrior stepped aside, forming a path lined with torches. The council waited in the center of the great stone circle, the ancient fire pit burning blue at its heart. The first elder raised his staff, by fire and oath. By soul and blade, we recognize these two not as outcasts, not as symbols, but as leaders. He looked to Grant. You carry no blood of this world, but your flame is pure. Will you guide not with power, but with truth? Grant looked out at the thousands of faces watching him, different species, colors, tribes, and he nodded. I will. Then the elder turned to Valari. You broke the oldest rules, bonded outside your kind. And yet your bond saved not only your clan, but even your enemies. Will you lead beside him, not as warrior or wife, but as equal? Valari didn't hesitate. I will. The elder stepped back. Then let it be written, the first flame-bonded union is born. New era begins. Drums began to beat. Sparks flew. From every torch, the flame pit rose in height, changing color, white at its base, gold at its tips. From its center, a new fire was born, smaller, pure. Flickering. Grant and Valerie stepped forward and placed both hands into the flame. It didn't burn. Instead, merged into their skin, forming a third mark. A final one. Unity. Strength. Choice. A triangle with a circle inside. It now glowed on both their palms. Gasps echoed across the circle. The flame spirit had sealed them not just as bonded but as founders. That night, a great feast took place. But Grant didn't sit long. He wandered to the edge of the village, where an old memorial stood, stone tablets with names carved deep, names of those who died in the wars. Valari found him there. You're thinking of them? She said. He nodded. I still see their faces, the crew I lost, the people I couldn't save. Even now, with all this, he clenched his fist. Sometimes I wonder if I deserve it. Stepped beside him. You don't lead because you're perfect. You lead because you care enough not to look away. She looked at the tablets too, and maybe that's what the flame really is. Not fire, not magic, just refusing to let others fall alone. Grant smiled at that. I think we both know that feeling. Far above them, in the orbiting skies, something stirred. A signal blinked, an old Earth beacon. Rescue ships were coming, but Grant didn't look up. He didn't need to. He knew who he was now, and wherever he went, whether among humans or aliens, he carried something no one else had. A flame that chose him. Final scene, 1 year later. World had changed. The flame bonded had become more than legend. They had become a symbol of unity, cross-species. The mountain tribes no longer fought. Old enemies now trained together. And in the center of it all stood two figures, a human, with fire in his eyes, and an alien warrior with a heart stronger than steel. Their child, a small girl with glowing blue skin and human brown eyes, ran between the villagers, laughing. The future wasn't perfect, but it was theirs.